All right, welcome everyone to today's demo on new features in Beest 11.06. I'll be showing some of those features today in our software, and then I'll explain as well some of the changes in the new air mod and air net models that have come out recently from the US EPA. So today we'll be talking about changes in the air mod and air net models first, and what we have done in these to support those models, support those changes. After that, we will have also another feature of Beest where you can now copy images to the clipboard from our software, from Beest. And I'll talk about the advanced test case modeling exercises that we've added in Beest as well. After that, we'll be talking about the Windows tool that we've added in this version of Beest, splitting batch files in a scheduler program, and then also changing our import kernel program and the default input file in there. All right, so first of all, I need to say that the US EPA released updates to both the AirNet model and the AirMod model at the end of December, on December 20th. Both of those models are now called version 11.06. And there are two changes that I want to talk about in the AirNet model first. And that is that starting with this version, AirNet now randomizes wind directions by default, which they have not been doing in the previous versions. So if you're creating an input file for the stage 2, which is the last stage of AirNet processing, and if you omit selecting this option, the wind directions will be randomized by default. And in all the previous versions, they were not. Now, this actually doesn't affect our interface, because what we've done is we've always had the setting to randomize by default as well. But if you're dealing with a file that's created by somebody else, or if you're creating your own file, you need to be aware of this change, so that now we have, you'll know that now AirNet will randomize the wind directions. And in our interface as well, where this is done is in the MP2 tab, which I'm showing here. And again, our program has actually not changed here. It's set to randomize by default. If you don't want that, you can actually select the drop-down list here and select the no random option, and then the directions will not be randomized. The next change also in AirNet 1.6.2.16 relates to the adjust U-star option. I'm going to go back and find in our interface, it's this option that says adjust surface friction velocity. That's adjust U-star. So in version 1.6.2.16, the EPA actually changed the way that they calculate this U-star. And in one part of their calculations, they're now dividing an equation by 4 instead of 2. The impact of that will be that if you are using the adjust U-star option in your AirNet data processing, the adjustment will now not be as much as it was in the previous version of AirMet. If you then use that new metadata that you just created in AirMod, you might get higher concentrations than you would previously in the previous version. So that's just something to be aware of if you are using the if you are using the adjust U-star option. Now I'll talk about the changes in the AirMod model. And while they didn't introduce new shortcuts or anything like that, they did change several options that were previously beta options to now be default options. And I will now go through those options and tell you about the new default options. So first of all, also regarding the U-star option, adjust U-star option, if you're using National Weather Service data, you can go ahead and use the adjust U-star option in AirMet, and then when you're on AirMod after that, you can go ahead and select the regulatory default option. You no longer need the beta option for that. If you're processing data from your own on-site met station, and you don't have turbulence, that's also a default option. However, if you do have turbulence, then you still need to select the data option when you're on AirMod. And what that means is that what not can happen is if you have an on-site met station that has instruments at two or more tower heights recording data simultaneously, and you use all of those data in your AirMet output, then you can run into this issue where you still have to select the beta option when you're on AirMod. Next up, in previous versions of the AirMod model, cap section horizontal releases could be used, but you had to use the beta option to do that. Now you can use them without restriction with the regulatory default option. And what that looks like in our interface is if you edit a source or if you go to the source grid view, you can now select these range cap and horizontal options without restriction. Whether you use default option, whether you use regulatory default option or non-default, they now don't require the beta option. Now you still do need to select the beta option if you use any of the low wind keywords in AirMod, which is low wind 1 through 3, and also if you want to run PST credit, you still need to set the beta option for those model runs. The next set of changes in AirMod in the model itself relates to NO2 modeling. So in previous versions, such as AirMod 15181, the case is clear. You had two options. One was called PVMRM, and the other was called PVMRM2. In this model, only the PVMRM2 option remains. So EPA has kept that option, and they've removed the other one, but now they're calling this option. Now they're calling this option just simply PVMRM. So you had options PVMRM1 and 2. The option 1 is gone, and now what used to be called PVMRM2 is now just PVMRM. And also, all of your NO2 modeling options, such as PVMRM and OLM, they are also no longer beta options. So they can now be used with regular. They can now be used as regulatory default options. And to support that, we have changed this NO2 modeling tab in Beast to allow you to select any one of these options, even if you have the regulatory default selected. I'm going to go ahead and go over to our Beast software to show that. Right, so in this model, I have the default selected. When I go to NO2, all of these options are available as default. Now you may notice a couple of things here. One is that we say non-default for OLM, even though the model is, even though the guidance document for AirMod says that it's default. What happens there is that the AirMod that EPA released actually has a bug in it where you have to select non-default over here to run OLM. They're going to fix it in the next update of the AirMod model. So if you want to run OLM, it's supposed to be available with the default option, but actually it's not for the moment. That will be fixed by the EPA fairly soon. The other thing is that once you select one of these options, you can't go back and just say, I want to use none of these options. That's actually a bug in Beest 11.06 that we are fixing, and that will be fixed in the next update to Beest, where you will be able to run NO2 with none of these options. For the time being, though, they are all on the NO2 tab, and also, once again, they can be used just with regulatory default without selecting the beta option. Now, also related to that, you see that some of these options have additional inputs, such as the ARM and ARM2 have these minimum and maximum ratios. In the current version of AirMod 11.06, if you want to enter custom values in those inputs, there are certain restrictions on the values. For the ARM, the 1-hour ratio has to be between 0.75 and 0.8. The other ratio has to be at least 0.75. For ARM2, the minimum has to be 0.5 and maximum has to be 0.9. Now you can put in different values, but if you do, you have to select the non-default option. I'm going to go ahead and show that as well. So it's in this model. I've selected the default option, and I want to use the ARM2 method with a minimum ratio of 0.2, not the 0.5. I can do that, but then when I run AirMod, it's going to give me an error. And says this minimum has to be, and says the minimum is less than 0.5, which is an error. So what they have to do then is just go back to the default section, just say non-default. Run this run this in non-default mode. And now I am able to enter this 0.2 value. Now for an AirMod, it's not going to give that error anymore. So those are the changes related to beta options and NO2 in Beest. And now there's one more change related to this version 1.6.2.16, and that is that the AirMod model published by the EPA actually has a bug for processing circular area sources. It doesn't occur in all circumstances, but when it does, it leads to much higher concentrations than before. So for now, you have two options there. You can wait for the EPA to publish an update to the AirMod model, which they should be doing within a week or two. Or for now, there's a workaround, which is to create a polygon that covers the same area as the area source, and use that polygon in your modeling. And I'm going to go and show you how to do that with Beest. All right, so in this example model, I have one circular area source, and that's it. And what you can do in Beest is right-click on it, say Edit Source, and you can actually click this button called Area Poly Source to convert the source to the polygon. Now, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and note some things about this source, such as the x and y coordinates, the radius, and the emission rate. And we have actually developed a spreadsheet that you can put this information into for the circular area source, and it will give you the coordinates for the polygonal source that corresponds to it. So what I've already done here is I've copied the information about my source, actually x, y coordinates, the radius, and the emission rate. Now I'm going to go and click this button for area poly. I'm going to say yes, I do want to convert it. And I'm going to tell it that in my polygonal area source, I want to have 20 corners. And also I'm going to fill in the emission rate here per square meter. I was going to copy that from our spreadsheet, put that into Beast, and now we will have the same emission rate for the polygonal source as for the circular source, which is 0.07 grams per second per meter squared. Now one more thing needs to be done in Beast, and that is to actually define the coordinates of our polygon. So to do that, I would say edit the vertices, and then I would just copy and paste those from Excel. So let me go ahead and do that now. All right, so that goes into our Beast window here. I click OK. Click OK again. Now what we have in Beast is a polygon that covers about the same area as the circle and has the same emission rate. So this is also an option for converting your circular area sources. Model them as polygons. And if anybody is interested in obtaining this example spreadsheet, you can contact me via my email address, which you will get at the end of this demo, and I can share the spreadsheet with you for calculating those corners of the polygon. Now again, the idea is they said that they will come out with a fix for this fairly soon, but in the meantime, you can use polygonal sources if you have circular area sources in your model. All right, so now the next improvement or change that we have added to Beast is to allow you to actually copy the inputs and outputs from the graphics display over to the clipboard. That can be done just by clicking the menu bar, or just pressing Control-C. You zoom out here a little bit, and then say Edit Copy. Then I can just paste that into any image editing program, or I can paste it just into any report document that I'm creating. And that will just take exactly what's displayed in Beast, at the same level of magnification, and just the same thing that you see in Beast will be copied and pasted over as an image. And this applies to the output graphics as well. So for example, I could display contours in my output graphics and have those copied over into a report as a figure. For a number of years, we've had something in Beast called a test case, which is an example modeling exercise that takes you through the steps of running the MMOD model and just takes you through a simple example that has one source and one building in it. We have now added a second modeling exercise called the advanced test case, where we go through a 5-year modeling exercise with SO2. And this new example has an offsite source in addition to an onsite source. And we go through the steps of calculating the impacts from both of them and then the contributions from our onsite source. the predicted concentrations. And if you want to take a look at this exercise, you can click the help menu. Go to the advanced test case instructions there. To go through that exercise and to go through the steps for that exercise. And again, that's just on the help menu right here. Now in Beest 11.06, we have also actually added a new program to our Beest suite that is called Windows. What that does is it takes metadata files in various formats, and it plots windows for the files. You can met files either directly in the program, or you can export AER metadata files from Beest, which I'll show next. And then once you have plotted the windows, we have some options in there to select exactly what dates you're processing. And just as with the graphics from Beest, you can also copy the graphics from the windows into a report or into an image file. All right, so first I'll go ahead and show the feature of how that's done from Beest. In my Met options here, I've selected one data file, which is a 2013 file from Station, North Carolina. If I click the name of that file on the right and click this new button, Display Windows, the Windows program will open and it will show you a Windows like the one shown in the next screenshot here. So take that file and plot the windows for you. And then there's some captions here that you can edit actually before you put that into reports. Now the metadata menu here allows you to load additional or different metadata files. For example, just raw surface data files and air minute files. You can load those into the program as well. And the options, which I'll show next, allows you to select which data exactly to process. So in options, by default, it's going to process 1 year, all hours, all days. But you can change that selection to either just process a selected month or selected hours in a day. For example, if your facility only operates for 7 hours in a day, that can be modeled here. Or you can select the exact starting and ending dates which to process from the data file. Now in this screenshot, it's set for the whole year, but again, you have several options to change that. And when you do the Windows display will be changed. I'm actually going to go ahead and open that program. And you can see that we can actually change these captions. And if that's the options on the file menu, there are options on the file menu to copy that. So I'm going to go ahead and say save to clipboard. They will copy all of this, both the Windows itself and the text below it. And then so that can be put into some kind of reports like this. If you go back and say copy figure, or say copy image, that's just going to copy this Windows image at the top of the screen and none of the stuff below. And again, in the metadata menu, we have several kinds of inputs, several kinds of data files that this program can open. Another, just a couple of more changes that I want to talk about. One is in our scheduler program, which allows you to run MOD batch files. We have added a new button to this tool that takes a single batch file and creates multiple files out of it. And once you've done that, you can actually run those files in parallel if you have a computer with multiple processors, which most people do today. So what that looks like is, in this example, I have a modeling exercise where I have 2 pollutants, and each one is running with 5 years of metadata. Now I can use this new split button to actually create several files out of this file that can be run in parallel. When I do that, the next screenshot shows you what that looks like. So you can select a folder where those batch files are written, and you can also select how many you want. In this case, I just told to create 2 files, and then when you click OK, it will create 2 files. One will be with the runs for the first pollutant, and the other for the second pollutant. And finally, in our import KML tool, we now use the folder for the input file by default when we select the output file, and I'll go ahead and show what that looks like as well. All right, so for example, my input file comes from the temp folder. Now when I click the second button to select my output file, it will automatically be placed in the same folder, and it will actually have the same name with the CSV extension. So now I can just say save, and that will be done like that. And it will be in the same folder as the input. So those are the changes in our Beest 11.06. We'll go ahead and stop the recording now, and I will go ahead and take questions from the audience.